About 4 months ago, I went to Target with my pregnant wife and 2-year-old son. It was 8 o'clock at night, so the store was relatively empty. I was watching my son play in the racks as my wife shopped. About 10 minutes in, I noticed two men walking the same aisles as us. Neither of them had a shopping cart or basket, and they didn't seem to be actually shopping for anything. One had a hood on, and the other had a baseball cap. I kept getting this weird vibe. They were watching us. Because it was late, my 2-year-old started melting down because I wouldn't buy him another Buzz Lightyear toy. I told my wife to go check out and I would take my son to the car. On my way out, I noticed the man in the hood was trailing us. I exited the store and started making my way through the parking lot to our car. I kept looking over my shoulder, and sure as this guy was trailing me. When I got to my car, I doubled back around to the front and boom, he pops right out. At this point, we were alone in the parking lot, 10 feet apart, staring straight at each other. I was holding my kid and had no other way of outrunning this guy. In a very stern voice, I asked him why the heck he is following me. He says he wanted to make sure that the child is mine. He kept yelling, "Is that your kid?" At this point, I reached my hand under my shirt and placed on the handle of my pistol while still keeping it concealed. I tell him that this is my son and he needs to leave us alone. The man continues to insist that I might be abducting this kid. Every fiber in my body was telling me he was trying to take my son. I held my ground and told him to leave us alone or I was calling the police. At this point, he took off across the parking lot, got into a car, and sped off. Very scary situation, but I'm just happy I went with my wife to Target that night. I used to work at Target in Melbourne back in 2003 when I was 18. I'm not what you call an average female. I'm 6'2", have lots of tattoos, and am not hard to miss if you were to come to the checkout. A quick layout of the store. It was 3 levels, including a basement level where the DVDs were, and where I used to work a few shifts. The majority of the time, though, I would spend working at the checkouts. One shift, an older man with gray hair and glasses came to the checkouts. The first thing I noticed is he didn't have any products to buy. He says, "Wow, you remind me so much of my granddaughter." Innocent, right? I smiled and joked about how she must be a great girl. Then began to ask me about my family and where I grew up, etc. Being from Eldorado, I knew I probably didn't know this man. It was weird, but not unsettling. Thankfully, there were customers behind him, and I politely said, "I need to get back to work." He smiled and said he might bring in some photos one day to show me. I smiled and he left. I didn't think about the encounter at all after that until 2 weeks later he was back. I wasn't worried, but just annoyed, being 18 and not interested. He showed me photos of his granddaughter and family, and there was a slight resemblance. Again, being a busy store, I had a lot of work to do and excused myself to get back to work. He stood in the store staring at me for a long while, which I noticed, and this was making me uncomfortable. My biggest mistake was not letting my supervisor know at the time. I didn't really tell anyone except for a friend who asked who he was. Skipped 3 weeks later, and yep, you guessed it, there he was. But this time he looked sad. He managed to give me a side as I was walking to my break. The photos he showed me were of a funeral. First of all, who the heck takes photos of a funeral? Anyway, he said that his daughter and granddaughter were murdered by a son-in-law, and he missed them very much. I kind of felt sorry for him, but then he said something that sent shivers up my spine. "I know that you're my granddaughter. I'm so happy to have found you again." What the actual heck? My face went red, as it does when I get nervous. "I don't think so, sir." "I've missed you so much, though." He began to cry and grabbed my arm. He tried to hug me, but luckily one of my tall managers walked by and I pulled away. "Hey, Grant, do you still need help with that cage?" Grant looked confused, but he must have seen my unease because he nodded. "Yeah, that'd be good." I looked back at the crying old man and smiled nervously. We got in the elevator and I escaped upstairs. I then told my manager what was happening, and they noticed how much this freaked me out. Thankfully, I didn't see this man for a few weeks. Having a week's holiday helped. Friend did say she saw him around, and he was looking for me. I came back to work, and not a week later, I came to the front register to start my shift, and I saw him. Luckily, he didn't see me. I stopped and headed back to the elevators. I found my manager and told him what was going on. He told me to go downstairs to the basement and stay there until he came and got me. I don't know what happened except what I was told. Apparently, the man started yelling and saying that his granddaughter worked here and started yelling that he needed to see me. The security and my manager tried for about 10 minutes to get him out of the store. He had with him photos, female clothing, and a bracelet. I can only assume they were from his granddaughter. He started screaming his granddaughter's name and had to be dragged out of the store. From that day on, I spent most of my time in the basement working the registers there. I left that job to move back to Eldorate soon after. I did kind of feel sorry for the man, having suffered such a loss. He was obviously not accepting their deaths. This happened about a year ago, and I still have yet to return to the store without my husband. So last July, I took my then 4- and 6-year-old sons to Target to back-to-school shop. Since having kids and hearing all about these horror stories, I'm very observant of my surroundings now. Anyways, while at Target, like most women, I look through all the sections. While in the women's clothing, I noticed 2 older men close by that kept looking over our way. I thought maybe I'm just being paranoid, so I kept going about my business, but kept my boys super close. We go to the baby section. They pop up. Toys, makeup, and the same thing. I was feeling really uneasy because they seemed to be everywhere we were, and they never had a cart. One guy was holding one little thing. I go to checkout and wait for a big group of nurses leaving Starbucks to walk out with. I threw the boys in the car without buckling them and locked the doors. As soon as I look up, the 2 guys walk out empty-handed looking around. I didn't think they saw me, so I started to leave when I looked at my rear-view mirror and saw them behind me in a truck. I stopped right there and turned and took a photo so they could see me. They turned like they are going back to the store, and I park over a couple of stores down where they can't see me and call the cops. While I'm on the phone with him in a full-blown panic attack, I watched one of the guys change his shirt and go back inside. I waited until the police got there so I could make sure they were there and had the right guys. I don't know what their plan was that day, but my mama gut told me it wasn't anything good, and I'm so thankful my babies and I are okay. After a minute, I pulled out my phone and showed multiple pictures of my husband and I with our son. Thankfully, this satisfied him, but I was by this point extremely upset. I had a feeling that lady had made some sort of comment about me to the security guard, and after asking him multiple times, he essentially confirmed that another shopper had said I had a child who I was clearly unrelated to and seemed suspicious. The security guard thought that most likely nothing was going on, but for some reason still decided to bother my son and me and take us into a weird small office, which was extremely intimidating. The other employee there turned out to be the manager, and seeing I was upset and kind of offended that I had essentially been treated as if I had been doing something wrong, likely only because I'm a different race than my son, they apologized. I was tempted to be a bit of a Karen, but my son was clearly anxious about the situation, and I just wanted to hold him tight and take him home. They walked us to the door, and we did just that. This was overall a very nerve-wracking experience, and now I'm afraid to go anywhere alone with our son without my husband or brother-in-law. There was a large family resemblance with our son. I can only assume this woman apparently was ignorant of the fact that parents do not exclusively have to be biologically related to their children, and assumed I was in possession of a child who I should not have been in possession of. That is the only explanation I can think of. The way she followed us around the store makes my skin crawl, and remembering being taken into that little office in question makes me so uncomfortable.